Welcome to section 4.3, solving quadratic equation by factoring. So before we do any kind of solving, I want to cover another basics with you. So when you hear the term foiling, it involves the operation multiply numerous times. So what I want to cover with you is factoring. So when you hear factoring, just be aware that we're going to be mostly working with divide. So just like foiling, where we're going to be multiplying, factoring, which is the opposite of foiling, is the operation divide. As y'all recall, multiply and divide are opposite operation between each other. So make sure you remember that when we are foiling, we're going to be multiplying. So in this section, when we're factoring, we're going to be dividing. And you will see what I mean by divide when we're going to be factor or finding greatest common factor. So let's take a look at the first example. X squared minus 4x minus 12 equal to 0. So once you have all the terms on the same side and the other side is 0, then you can start identifying your ABC values. Let me use a different color. So again, this is A, B, C. So A is the invisible 1, B is the negative 4 in front of x, and C is the regular number, negative 12. So after you identify ABC, what we're going to do here is set up the x table or x chart like this. So for the x chart, on the very top, it's going to be A times C. Let me use a different color so you can clearly see. So A times C, and then the very bottom is B. So what I'm going to do here is, let's take a look at our A and our C value, and we're going to multiply. So 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. And then on the very bottom, we're just going to put our B value, which is negative 4. Alright, next, I'm going to set up my table to organize my work and then identify possible factors. So, on the left side of this table, we're going to be looking for factors of A times C. And then on the right side of the table, we're going to be looking for the sum and difference. Sum or difference. So what I mean by sum and difference is the sum or the difference between the two factors that we find for A times C. Alright, so we have to find two numbers that can multiply into negative 12, and then the sum and difference is negative 4. Now, in order to find factors, two numbers that multiply into negative 12, the one thing you have to know is that one has to be a positive number and one has to be a negative number. So let's think of what possible factors that we can use for negative 12. One example, you can use negative 4 times positive 3. It will give you negative 12. Let me move it to the side. Negative 4 times positive 3 will give you negative 12. But if I were to combine my factors between negative 4 and a positive 3, the sum and difference between those two factors is negative 1. So it doesn't match with my B value, so I can't use these two factors. Now another one would be negative 3 times positive 4. Now that will also give you negative 12. But if I combine my factors, negative 3 with a positive 4, the sum and difference is positive 1. So what I did was I switched a negative between the two factors. And even though I switched a negative, if you look at the pattern, the only difference is opposite sign, just same number. So regardless, I can't use negative 4 with positive 3, nor negative 3 with positive 4. So we have to think of another factor. So say I do negative 12 times positive 1. That will give me negative 12 when we multiply. But when we combine negative 12 with positive 1, the sum and difference will be negative 11. So I'm still far off from negative 4. Now, if I try switching to negative, just like how I did from the first to the second, I'm just going to have opposite sign but same number. So there's no reason for me to do negative 1 with positive 12. Now, what we can do is try negative 2 times positive 6. When you multiply, that will give us negative 12. If I combine negative 2 with a positive 6, my sum and difference is 4. So I'm kind of close. It's the same number, but opposite sign. So what happened if I switch to negative? So instead of negative 2, I have negative 6, and it's multiplying with positive 2. Negative 6 times positive 2 will give us negative 12 when you multiply. And if I combine negative 6 with a positive 2, then the sum and difference is negative 4. So I found the right pair of factors, which is negative 6 and positive 2. So I'm going to write negative 6 here and positive 2. Now what I'm going to include is my variable x on the negative 6 and x on the positive 2. So what I'm going to do next, after I found the correct pair of factors, is I'm going to set up my work to do factor by grouping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the first term, x squared, right here. Then I'm going to write down negative 6x or minus 6x, and then positive 2x. And then I'm going to use the last term, minus 12. So again, I use the first term from the problem, then my middle term, minus 6x and plus 2x from here, and then I'm using the last term from the problem. Alright, once I finish setting up the work, now it's time to do factor by grouping. So, factor by grouping, what I'm going to do is split this in half. So, I have my left side, which I'm going to underline in blue, and then my right side, which I'm going to underline in green. So, here when we do factor by grouping, it's going to relate to what I mentioned before. When we're factoring, we're going to divide. So, let's take a look at the left side. So, when we factor by grouping, we're basically going to see what is in common between the two terms I underline in blue. So the only thing that's in common is that they both have x. So I'm going to factor out the x, meaning I'm going to divide. So this is my GCF, my greatest common factor on the left side. So when I factor out my GCF, which is the x, I'm going to put the GCF outside the parenthesis. Now the first part, x squared divided by x is x. Then negative 6x divided by x will be negative 6 or minus 6, and I'm going to close parenthesis. Now I'm going to factor out the right side. So the only thing that's in common on the two terms on the right that are underlined in green between 2x and negative 12 is that both of these numbers are divisible by 2. So my GCF is 2. Now since this is positive, I'm going to write plus 2 as my GCF, and then I put open parenthesis. So I'm going to do this part first. 2x divided by 2 is simply x. Here, negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. And then close parenthesis. Now, in order to continue and complete factor by grouping is that if these two factors are exactly the same, same sign, same number, same order, if they're exactly the same, then that means that you can group the outside factor, the GCF, together. So that's why it's called factor by grouping. Basically, we're going to group the left GCF and the right GCF as x plus 2. And I'm going to group it in parentheses. And then the common factors, the ones that are underlined in pink, the ones that were exactly the same, after I divide the left side and the right side, I'm just going to write it once, x minus 6. So, that's all I have to do when I'm factoring or solving quadratic equation by factoring. This will be my final answer. Let me see if I can box this. And then that's all you have to do. Now, how do you know if I got the answer correctly? So, all of this, I did it involving with division. What I'm going to do is I'm going to FOIL, so I'm going to multiply and see if my answer matched with the original problem. So, let's FOIL. X times x, that's x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Then the 2. 2 times x is positive 2x. And then 2 times negative 6 is minus 12. Then I'm going to combine like terms, which is the middle, negative 6x plus 2x. So that's going to be negative 4x. And then I bring down to minus 12. And I bring down to x squared, because there's nothing else you can combine. And if you look closely, this looks exactly the same as the original problem. So therefore, I got the right answer, which is x plus 2 times x minus 6. And then that's all you have to do for factoring by grouping when a is 1.